On this edition of Whether or Not, NASA is developing a new heat shield that will be placed in front of all of its new rockets. What does that mean for the future of the space industry and future launches? And then we have another Nature in the News story where the apple crops are loving all this rain. So what does that mean for the apple crops in the stores and coming up in the future? And then Jacob Morse has what the rain means and how it is connected to climate change here in central Pennsylvania. All that and more on this edition of Whether or Not. Well, welcome into this edition of Whether or Not. I'm your host, Patrick Wright.
And I'm your forecaster, Matt Hoenig.
And we have a lot in store, but first, let's get a little tease on your forecast coming up. Matt, what's going on?
Yeah, so it's been pretty rainy as of late here in central Pennsylvania. In the past week or so, we've seen upwards of 5, 6, 7 inches of rain here in the region. But thankfully, looking at quieter weather this weekend, and I'll have more in my forecast coming up in just a little bit.
Ooh, I'm excited to hear that. But first, we have Nature in the News.
Well, Patrick, who doesn't love a crisp apple this time of year? And unfortunately, the rainy summer across the Northeast wasn't super convenient for vacationers and campers, but the heavy rains were good for something. Hint, it was the apple crop. According to an article by the Produce News, many apple orchards in the state of New York are expected to have one of the best apple crops in the last decade. Some of the state's largest apple orchards received anywhere between 1 and 5 inches of rain this summer. New York Apple Sales Director of Field Operations Matt Wells says this is the perfect amount of rain for an abundant apple crop. He also adds farmers who are in areas that saw too little or too much rain can still rely on good irrigation and growing techniques to produce a strong apple crop.
In late 2017, the Cassini space probe made its final passes around Saturn before deliberately plunging into its surface. Before Cassini made its final descent, it picked up a surprisingly powerful interaction between Saturn and its 6th largest moon, Enceladus. It is best if I let you listen. What you are hearing is the interaction between Enceladus and Saturn through plasma waves. The recording is a result of converting the energy detected into an audio file, much like a radio converting electromagnetic waves into music. The plasma waves are generated through a complex interaction between the geological activity of the moon, Saturn's magnetic field, and ionized water vapor surrounding Saturn. Enceladus acts as a generator for the plasma waves, eventually receiving a response from Saturn itself. This specific recording lasted roughly 16 minutes and was condensed into a 28.5-second audio file. For the full version of the clip, visit www.nasa.gov under the Cassini topic.
As another destructive wildfire season rages on, forecasters are concerned about the potential for more wildfires. On Wednesday, the National Weather Service issued a red flag warning for much of Nevada and interior California. Low humidity and wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour were forecasted. Locals were advised to avoid activities that could start or fuel wildfires. The forecasted conditions were ripe for fires to rapidly grow in size and intensity before first responders could contain them. In addition, those gusty winds were expected to create areas of blowing dust and dangerous crosswinds, impacting travel along some of the region's major interstates. Well, a well-deserved break in the rain is coming this weekend. Not so much on Friday, unfortunately. We'll have this stalled out frontal boundary just to our south, and with it, we'll see a few waves of scattered showers move through during the day on Friday. But just in time for the weekend, this area of high pressure over New England starts to sink more to the south. That's not only going to push the rain to the south, but start to introduce drier conditions and more mild temperatures come this weekend. You can also see Hurricane Florence down here starting to impact the Carolinas this weekend, and that's also where a lot of the rainfall will be confined to. By Sunday, we should see a little bit more in the way of sunshine than on Saturday as the winds start to shift more out of the south rather than the east in our region. So that'll be a nice treat for our weekend. For your Friday, we will see those waves of scattered showers. It won't be a washout whatsoever. In fact, most of the showers should fall during the morning and early afternoon hours. And high temperature on Friday will be pretty mild, up to 74 degrees. For your Friday night, we will start to dry out, just some cloud cover. And it won't be a chilly night whatsoever either, with lows falling into the middle 60s. So just a light jacket probably needed for your Friday evening plans. Come Saturday, though, what a beautiful day for football. Clouds and then a few breaks of sunshine in the afternoon hours, and another mild day up to 75 degrees should be perfect for the kickoff. And for the day on Sunday, even more in the way of sunshine as temperatures rise even further into the upper 70s across portions of our region. Coming up next, Jacob Morse has a feature on the recent rains and how it may connect to climate change.
The summer of 2018 in central and eastern Pennsylvania will certainly be remembered for its historic rainfall, even continuing into this past weekend, where State College saw 2 consecutive days of over 2 inches of rainfall, something that has only been done once before in our climate records. When looking at the entirety of meteorological summer, which lasts from June through August, State College shattered its old record of total precipitation over this time frame, and July was the wettest on record at many locations in the central and eastern parts of the state. But diving a little deeper into the numbers, I began to notice a trend that many of the top 10 wettest summers have occurred since the turn of the century. I sat down with Dr. Michael Mann, a distinguished professor of atmospheric science at Penn State and the director of the Earth System Science Center, to see if there was a correlation between increased rainfall and climate change.
So in isolation, it might seem odd to say that climate change played a role. Hey, we get, wet, summers now and then just because of the vagaries of weather, random chance. But when you step back and you look at the larger scale pattern of the atmosphere during July and August, there was something very interesting going on. It's a phenomenon that we've actually published on. It has to do with what's known as planetary wave resonance. Rossby waves, planetary waves.
These Rossby waves are giant meanders in high altitude winds in the mid-latitudes of the globe. Some Rossby waves are very influential in our weather as they create the high and low pressure areas at Earth's surface.
Under certain conditions, you can get highly amplified Rossby waves. So you get these widely meandering Rossby waves that gives you very large sort of regional weather anomalies.
Normally, Rossby waves move eastward around the globe along with weather systems. However, sometimes this movement slows down or even freezes.
The jet stream sort of stalls out. The entire system remains stationary. So once again, you have very unusual weather, and it's persistent. The same location is under a low pressure system day after day. That's why we were getting dumped on, all that rain. But at the same time, that stationary, highly amplified Rossby wave pattern was giving us a very strong high-pressure system in the west associated with the drought and the heat that led to unprecedented wildfire in California. The Arctic, unprecedented heat and drought. Europe, unprecedented heat. Japan had one of the worst flooding episodes on record. All of those regional anomalies were associated with this very unusual large-scale pattern. Our own research published last year indicates that climate change is making this phenomenon more frequent, and it's doing that in part because of the amplified warming of the Arctic. And just sort of weather 101, the jet stream owes its location to the north-south variations in temperature, the temperature gradient, in what's known as the thermal wind equation. So the warmer it is at the equator relative to the pole, the colder it is at the pole relative to the equator, the sharper that gradient, the stronger those westerly winds aloft, the jet stream. Well, Arctic amplification, the fact that global warming is warming the Arctic faster, means you're decreasing that gradient, you're slowing down the jet stream, and you're also making this phenomenon more likely. So let's forget about the jet stream for a moment. If we knew nothing about the jet stream, there's some simple arguments for why certain types of weather extremes are expected to become more common in a warming planet, on a warming planet. Heat waves. As you warm up the planet, you're going to get more frequent and intense heat waves because you're just sort of shifting the bell curve over. And the tail of the bell curve, where you get those extreme events, increases quite a bit. So you get more of those heat extremes as you warm the planet. At the same time, you warm up the atmosphere, it can hold more water vapor through the Clausius-Clapeyron equation. And so that means that when conditions are conducive to precipitation, to rainfall, you get more of it, potentially in shorter periods of time. But that same equation, Clausius-Clapeyron, tells you that you're going to evaporate moisture from soils more rapidly at higher temperatures. And so in many regions, you get worse drought.
And if we have an eye on the future, it doesn't look so bright if we continue to release fossil fuels into the atmosphere.
If you look at the projections of what's likely to happen over the next century, substantial parts of the planet become unlivable for human beings. Basically, heat indices become too too high for human habitation over basically, the bulk of the tropics. So heat is a problem. That heat, of course, is melting the ice. That's leading to sea level rise, along with the expansion of the ocean as the seawater expands with warming. The real worry, of course, is that we start to trigger some of these irreversible collapses in the ice sheets.
The problem is that there's a delay between when we release fossil fuels into the atmosphere and when effects of climate change are felt.
We are locking in climate changes for centuries based on the actions that we are engaging in today. The good news is that there is still time to avert the worst impacts of climate change, but we really have to act now.
Across the globe, extreme weather events such as droughts, floods, and wildfires continue to be impacted by climate change, making them more prolonged and more severe. Here in Pennsylvania, more summers with extreme weather, such as this past summer where we saw exceptionally high rainfall totals, might be more common in our future due to the impacts of climate change. For Weather or Not, I'm Jacob Morse.
I'm back with a look at your extended forecast. First, let's take a look at this weekend. Unfortunately, not the nicest day on Friday with some shower activity, mainly during the morning and early afternoon hours. By late afternoon, we'll start to clear out, and that'll give way to a little bit of sunshine on Saturday, more in the way of sunshine come Sunday, and temperatures on the rise as well into the middle and upper 70s. For next week, however, it will be a little bit more unsettled than this weekend. Chances of showers introduce themselves on Monday with still pretty mild temperatures up around 75. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, not looking like the greatest days whatsoever with a lot of shower activity. And temperatures starting to cool off as well by Thursday. That's when we'll start to see a break in the rain. And then for Friday, we will start to see some more sunshine and drier conditions move in. So that'll be fantastic for the beginning of next weekend.
Well, Matt, it looks like we might be finally getting a break and getting some sunshine in here.
Yeah, we're a little bit of a break from the rainy pattern we've been seeing. I'm not super optimistic about sunshine come Saturday. But come Sunday, we should definitely see more in the way of a blend of sun and clouds, and temperatures returning to normal as well. We've been kind of stuck in the 50s and 60s. Now this weekend, we'll start to get back into the 70s.
Well, good. Finally, any sunshine will be best.
Absolutely. Get out there and enjoy it while we have it.
And so, with that, we're going to transition over to the Weather Whiz quiz. And so the question was, which location has the longest continuous series of directly measured carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? A, Denver, Colorado, B, Mauna Loa, Hawaii, or C, Mount Everest, Nepal, or D, State College, Pennsylvania? And if you answered B, Mauna Loa, Hawaii, you are correct. So congrats on that. And the measurements taken at Mauna Loa, Hawaii are at an elevation of 5,400 meters, with carbon dioxide levels reaching a new record level of 410 parts per million in early 2018.
The data from this observing site, which scientists believe does a good job of reflecting the truth about our global atmosphere, has been steadily increasing since observations began there in 1958. When those observations began, carbon dioxide levels were around 315 parts per million. More information can be found at esrl.noaa.gov. So some very interesting stuff about our carbon dioxide observations here on Earth.
Very much so. But sadly, it's that time. We have to end our broadcast for today. But I'm your host, Patrick Wright.
And I'm your forecaster, Matt Hoenig.
And make it a great one, everybody.